All right. Welcome back to the deep dive, everybody. So, you know how this works. You send us the sources that are sparking your curiosity, and we take a deep dive into them. Our goal is to really distill the key insights, the stuff that'll make you feel instantly in the know. You know what I mean? It's all about cutting through the noise and giving you those aha moments.
Precisely. No one has time for information overload these days.
Exactly. And today, we're focusing on something that really caught our eyes, the IsoTone device.
Oh, very interesting choice.
We were really intrigued when we saw this, so we dug into an interview with the creator, Dr. Lev Neymotin. And let me tell you, it's packed with fascinating insights. If you're someone who wants to quickly get a grasp on the potential of new fitness and therapy tech, well, this deep dive is right up your alley.
Absolutely.
So let's jump right into it. When we first started looking at this IsoTone device, we thought, okay, what sparked this whole thing? Like, what was the need that Dr. Neymotin saw? What was he trying to solve?
Right, getting to the heart of the inspiration behind it. So, naturally, the very first question we posed to Dr. Neymotin in the interview was, what was that driving force behind the creation of the IsoTone? What was the gap in the market that he was aiming to fill?
Yeah, like what problem was he trying to solve?
You can really tell that Dr. Neymotin's background, in mechanical engineering, that really played a key role in his thinking here. His whole focus has been on, health innovation, and particularly on creating better physical therapy tools. So with the IsoTone, he zeroed in on what he felt was a really fundamental need. A device that's, well, first off, compact, like something that could easily fit into your life.
Right, portable.
Exactly. But it also needed to be intuitive and user-friendly, and yet he also wanted it to be powerful enough to deliver a full range of resistance exercises and even, get this, therapeutic massage. And he really wanted it to be accessible to just about anyone, anywhere.
Ambitious.
Oh, definitely. And I think a lot of us can relate to this. If you've ever looked at some of the existing resistance devices out there, they can be a bit clunky, right?
You're telling me some of those things are like mini weight machines.
Yeah. And not exactly something you can just toss in your bag and take with you. Plus, a lot of them offer a pretty limited range of exercises, or they just might not be suitable for people who are, say, recovering from an injury or dealing with an illness.
Not very adaptable.
Right. And that lack of adaptability, that's exactly what Dr. Neymotin wanted to address with the IsoTone. His vision was centered around creating a device that truly adapts to the user, regardless of their current physical capabilities or their fitness goals.
That's a really great point. I think that's something we often overlook, how fitness equipment can be really intimidating, especially for beginners or if you're coming back from an injury.
It's true. So moving on, I think one of the things that really caught our attention was how Dr. Neymotin emphasized those, almost buzzwords, versatility, portability, and this idea of really targeted muscle engagement.
Yeah, how do you actually engineer that into a device? What makes the IsoTone so unique compared to all the other stuff out there?
It's a great question. And it's one we were really eager to delve into with Dr. Neymotin. So, that was actually our second question. How did they actually bake those qualities into the device?
Right, because it's easy to say, but actually doing it, that's the hard part.
And from what Dr. Neymotin explained, those key features are really the outcome of a very deliberate combination of, some genuine mechanical innovation, but also a really strong emphasis on the user experience. It's not just about the mechanics. It's about how people actually use it.
Yeah, that human-centered design element is really crucial, isn't it?
Definitely. And the good example of that is the IsoTone's handles. They're spherical, and the reason for that specific shape is to make sure they fit comfortably and securely in pretty much anyone's hand.
They're not like, those standard grip handles you see on a lot of equipment.
Exactly. They put a lot of thought into even that small detail. And then there's the whole internal resistance system. That's where things get really clever. It's designed so that no matter how you're moving the device, you're engaging a whole range of muscle groups. You could be pushing, pulling, twisting. It doesn't matter. The resistance is there throughout the entire 360 degrees of motion.
It's like having resistance in every direction.
Right. It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about the engineering that must go into making that work so smoothly. And then what's even cooler is that the resistance isn't fixed. It actually adjusts automatically based on how much force the user is applying.
So it's not a constant resistance. It kind of meets you where you are.
Exactly. So whether you're just starting out on your fitness journey or you're a super athlete, the IsoTone is designed to challenge you appropriately.
That's so smart.
Yeah.
Because then it never feels too easy, but it's also not impossible to use if you're not already in great shape.
And that's a big part of what sets it apart from, say, traditional resistance bands or free weights. Dr. Neymotin made a point of contrasting this with those more traditional tools, where the resistance is either fixed or it sort of drops off at certain points in the movement.
Yeah, you don't always feel the resistance the whole time.
Right. And that's what he sees as one of the big inefficiencies with those types of tools. With the IsoTone, it's continuous resistance throughout the entire range of motion, no matter which way you're moving.
So it's like maximizing the effort you're putting in.
Exactly. He called it 100% efficient exercise. And you know what else is really interesting? It's not just about those big muscle groups either. Dr. Neymotin actually pointed out that the design of the handles, the size and the shape, it even allows you to engage your finger muscles during exercise.
Whoa. Really?
Yeah. It's really a very holistic approach to muscle activation, considering things that most fitness tools don't even think about. So you can see how much thought went into just the, practical aspects of using this device.
Absolutely. And speaking of the design process, I'm really curious about the challenges they must have faced in creating something this compact, yet seemingly so powerful.
Yeah, it almost feels like a bit of magic.
So our third question for Dr. Neymotin was really all about that. Like, what were some of the biggest hurdles in designing a device that's so small and portable, but can still deliver so much resistance?
Yeah.
And, more importantly, how did they actually overcome those challenges?
It's almost like fitting a whole gym into something the size of your hand.
Right. Like, how do you do that?
And, Dr. Neymotin was very upfront about the fact that it wasn't easy. One of the first things he mentioned was, just the basic challenge of cramming a whole lot of resistance functionality into such a tiny space.
Yeah, you can't just shrink a weight machine down to the size of a tennis ball.
Exactly. So they had to really experiment with all sorts of different internal mechanisms, and they needed to find a way to make sure the resistance wasn't just there, but that it was also smooth and could be scaled up or down to different levels of intensity. And they had to do all of that without making the device, bulky or uncomfortable to hold.
Right. You don't want it to feel clunky or break after a few uses.
And on top of that, Dr. Neymotin talked about how challenging it was to ensure a consistent, and this was his word, elegant performance across a wide range of intensities. He wanted it to feel good to use no matter how much resistance you're working against.
So it's not just about functionality, it's about the feel of it.
Absolutely. So how did they do it? Well, from what he explained, it was a very meticulous process of testing out different mechanical solutions and then doing a ton of user testing to really fine-tune how the IsoTone responds and how it feels in the hand.
So it sounds like a lot of trial and error, but also a lot of listening to what users were saying.
Absolutely. And, speaking of technology, we were really curious about what Dr. Neymotin kept referring to as the patent-pending technology at the heart of the IsoTone.
Yes. The stuff that makes it all tick.
Our fourth question was all about that. We wanted to know, how does it work? What's the secret sauce that maximizes workout efficiency?
Yeah, and obviously he couldn't give away all their trade secrets.
Oh, of course not. But he did give us some intriguing clues. And what's particularly fascinating is how the IsoTone combines this dynamic, self-adjusting resistance with what he called mirror-directional feedback. So it's basically designed to instantly match the force that the user is applying in any direction they move the device.
It's like anticipating your movements.
It really is. And that's what creates this really unique self-regulating experience, making it suitable for people across a whole spectrum of ages and fitness levels. And I think that's a key part of why it feels so intuitive to use.
You're not constantly having to adjust settings or swap out resistance bands or anything like that.
And Dr. Neymotin really stressed that the IsoTone, it becomes almost like an extension of your own body. It's moving with you, adapting to your effort in real time. And then, of course, there's that built-in effort gauge.
Oh, right. That little display on the device.
Yeah, that's providing you with this immediate feedback on your performance. So you're not just guessing, you're getting real data on how much effort you're putting in.
It's like having a personal trainer right there in your hand.
So shifting gears a little bit, we were curious about who Dr. Neymotin really saw as the ideal user for the IsoTone. Was it primarily aimed at, the hardcore fitness crowd, or was he thinking more broadly?
Yeah, who was he picturing when he was designing this thing?
That was actually our fifth question for him. Was it fitness enthusiasts, physical therapists, or was it a much wider audience?
And how did they design the IsoTone to cater to those specific needs?
Well, it turns out Dr. Neymotin has a pretty inclusive vision for this device. He sees it as beneficial for, absolutely, fitness enthusiasts who are looking for a compact, versatile tool for a whole range of exercises.
Like people who want to be able to train anywhere, anytime.
Exactly. But he doesn't stop there. He also specifically mentioned physical therapists who need a tool that's safe and adaptable both for rehab and for preventative therapy.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to prevent injuries in the first place.
I bet that self-adjusting resistance is a game changer for PTs.
Oh, absolutely. And then he went on to talk about older adults or people recovering from surgery who need a much gentler, more gradual form of resistance.
Right. People who maybe couldn't handle traditional weights or equipment.
Exactly. He even suggested that office workers could use it just for some quick tension relief or to get a little movement in during their workday.
I can totally see that. Like just a few minutes here and there to kind of wake up your muscles.
It's really designed to fit into anyone's routine, no matter how busy they are.
So it sounds like there's a really broad range of potential users for this thing.
Oh, absolutely. And, the overarching goal, as Dr. Neymotin put it, was to create something that could scale with the user's needs and seamlessly fit into a variety of environments. So whether you're at the gym, at home, in your office, or even, traveling, the IsoTone can be there with you.
Speaking of applications, I'm particularly interested in the whole physical therapy angle. So our sixth question was all about how Dr. Neymotin ensured that the IsoTone could meet the specific needs of, say, post-trauma recovery.
Yeah, that's a really critical area where the right tools can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. And Dr. Neymotin was really clear about the fact that they worked very closely with physical therapists and medical professionals to make sure the IsoTone was up to the task. And again, that self-adjusting resistance is a huge part of it.
Right. Because it responds to the user's force, you don't need all those complicated setups or manual adjustments that you often see with traditional PT equipment.
Which can be really challenging for someone who's, recovering from an injury or just starting to regain strength.
Yeah, and it can make the whole process feel less intimidating too.
Definitely. And the fact that the resistance is so smooth, combined with that full 360-degree range of motion, is also really important for rehab. Dr. Neymotin explained that it allows for a very gentle retraining of those movement patterns, which is crucial for anyone who's recovering from trauma or who has sensitive joints.
It's about rebuilding strength and mobility, but doing it in a way that's safe and controlled.
Exactly. Now, one of the things that really intrigued us about the IsoTone was this unique effort gauge feature.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That seemed like a really innovative addition.
So our seventh question was all about that. We wanted to know, what does it do? And how does it help both the users and the therapists?
Yeah, how does it actually work?
So here's where things get really interesting. The effort gauge, it actually measures your physical exertion in real time as you're exercising. And the way it does that is by tapping into the heat that the IsoTone itself generates as you're using it.
So it's not measuring body heat.
No, it's actually measuring the temperature of the device itself.
Yep.
Like as you're pushing and pulling, the IsoTone is converting your energy into heat, and the gauge is picking up on that.
That's so clever. I mean, I've never seen anything like that before.
What's cool is that it gives you this really immediate visual feedback. So you can see on the display how much effort you're putting in, which can be super helpful for staying consistent with your workouts and for, motivating yourself to push a little bit harder.
And it's not just a subjective feeling, it's actual data.
Exactly. And Dr. Neymotin even mentioned that there's a simple calculation you can use to estimate how many calories you're burning based on that temperature reading.
So it's not just for tracking progress, it can actually help you manage your calorie expenditure as well.
Absolutely. And then from a therapist's perspective, this effort gauge provides them with something that's frankly often missing from these types of portable devices. It gives them objective data.
Data they can use to actually track their patient's recovery or how much strength they're gaining over time.
Right, and that can be hugely valuable for tailoring rehab programs and making sure that the exercises are challenging enough, but not too challenging.
It's like bringing the precision of a lab setting into, the real world.
Now, since the IsoTone has been out in the wild for a bit, we were really curious to hear about the user feedback that Dr. Neymotin has been getting.
Right. How are people actually using it? And what do they think of it?
So that was our eighth question for him. What's the feedback been like? And has that feedback led to any updates or changes in how they're approaching the development of the IsoTone?
Because real-world feedback is so crucial for any product, especially in the fitness and health space.
Absolutely. And Dr. Neymotin, he was actually really enthusiastic about the feedback they've been receiving. He said it's been overwhelmingly positive. Users are consistently praising the IsoTone for its simplicity, its portability, and most importantly, its effectiveness.
People are actually seeing results.
That's the key. And it's not just the everyday users who are impressed. He mentioned that physical therapists, in particular, are really excited about the IsoTone, especially because of that real-time resistance adaptability, and because it's so easy to learn how to use.
It's not a big, complicated machine that requires a lot of training.
Exactly. And many PTs are actually seeing it as a kind of bridge between traditional fitness equipment and those more specialized rehab tools.
So it can be used in a variety of settings for a variety of purposes.
And what's really great is that Dr. Neymotin emphasized that they're not just collecting this feedback, they're actually using it. They're incorporating it into their development process.
It's an iterative process, constantly evolving based on what users are saying.
Yeah, they're using that feedback to design new exercises for different muscle groups, and they're also exploring more applications in preventative care and physical therapy.
So it's a device that's constantly getting better and more versatile.
And speaking of development, we were also curious about the scientific validation behind the IsoTone.
Right, because, there are a lot of fitness gadgets out there that make big claims, but don't necessarily have the science to back it up.
So our 9th question was all about that. We wanted to know, is Dr. Neymotin working with any fitness experts, therapists, or researchers to really rigorously evaluate how effective the IsoTone is?
Because ultimately, it needs to deliver on its promises, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Dr. Neymotin did say that they have plans for full-scale clinical trials down the line. But even now, they're working very closely with a network of physical therapists, kinesiologists, and occupational therapists.
So they're getting input from the people who are actually using it in the field.
And that feedback is helping them refine the IsoTone, making sure that the movements, the resistance levels, and even the massage features are all optimized for the best possible outcomes.
It's like a constant cycle of testing, feedback, and improvement.
Right. And they've also started doing some observational studies, particularly looking at the IsoTone's impact on circulation and joint mobility.
So gathering real-world data on its effectiveness.
Finally, our 10th question was all about the future. We wanted to know, where does Dr. Neymotin see the IsoTone going in the next, say, 5 years? What's his long-term vision for the device and the company?
Because it feels like this could be just the beginning, right?
It really does. And let me tell you, Dr. Neymotin, he has some pretty big plans. He believes the IsoTone has the potential to become a really widespread, widely accepted tool in both the fitness and therapy worlds. Like, he used the word ubiquitous, which is a pretty bold statement.
Wow, so he sees this as something that could be everywhere.
And they're already working on some exciting new developments, like interchangeable attachments that will allow you to do even more specialized exercises with the IsoTone. And they're also looking into integrating more advanced app-based analytics so you can really track your progress in detail.
That would be awesome, to be able to see your progress and adjust your training accordingly.
And maybe the most exciting thing is that they're even exploring this idea of a digital twin platform, which would allow for remote therapy monitoring.
So your therapist could track your progress even if you're not in the clinic.
Exactly. So it sounds like the IsoTone, it's really just the first step in a much bigger vision for Dr. Neymotin and his team. They want to create a whole platform of intelligent, adaptive movement solutions.
So it's not just about this one device. It's about changing how we approach fitness and rehabilitation altogether.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into this interview with Dr. Lev Neymotin, I think it's safe to say that the IsoTone is a really fascinating, innovative take on resistance training and therapeutic exercise. It's portable, it's versatile, and it's clearly been designed with the user in mind.
And it seems like Dr. Neymotin and his team are really committed to incorporating user feedback and staying at the forefront of this evolving world of health and wellness tech.
And now, here's a question for you, our listener. How do you think a device like the IsoTone, with its adaptive resistance and that amazing portability, could change your approach to fitness, to rehab, or even just to managing your everyday physical well-being? It's really something to think about as we see these kinds of innovative tools emerge.
What resonated most with you from what we've discussed today, and how do you see yourself incorporating these kinds of advancements into your own life?
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dives. Until next time, keep those sources coming and keep exploring.
We'll be here to guide you through the fascinating world of knowledge.
And remember, it's all about those aha moments.